You're not the one who wasn't enough. He wasn't ready for what you brought to the table. That's something most people don't realize in the moment, especially when a relationship ends unexpectedly, or when you're left sitting with all these questions, wondering if you could have done something differently. You think, was I too much, too intense, too emotional? Maybe I pushed him away. Let me stop you right there. Because the truth is, you were exactly what someone who's ready for a real relationship would want. You weren't too much. You were honest. You were invested. You showed up. When a man loses a woman like that, it's not because she wasn't enough. It's because he wasn't in a place where he could receive what she was offering. He might not have the emotional capacity, the self-awareness, or even the maturity to recognize the quality of what's in front of him. And that's not a reflection of you, it's a reflection of him. But when we're in that moment, heartbroken, confused, we often internalize the loss. We start creating this narrative where it was somehow our fault, where maybe if we'd been a little more patient, a little less expressive, a little more easygoing, he would have stayed. But that's not how it works. A man who's ready doesn't get scared off by a woman who knows what she wants. He doesn't ghost when she communicates her needs. He doesn't pull away when she shows love, loyalty, or strength. In fact, a man who's truly ready finds all of those things magnetic. He doesn't just tolerate your standards, he respects them, because he knows that a woman who brings value into his life isn't just someone to casually date. She's someone to build a future with. And yet what happens so often is this. A high-value woman walks into a relationship fully present, fully herself, giving openly, loving deeply, and the man, instead of rising to meet her, shrinks. Maybe not consciously, but it shows. He becomes inconsistent. He makes excuses. He avoids the real conversations. And eventually he either fades or pushes her away, not because of who she is, but because of what he's not yet ready to be. See, when someone walks away from you, we tend to see that as a statement about our worth. But what if it's actually a gift? What if it's the universe's way of removing someone who couldn't give you what you deserve before you invested even more of your precious time? Because staying in a relationship where your worth isn't seen, where your presence isn't valued, only diminishes your light over time. And if someone can't see what's in front of them, if they treat it casually, if they let it slip through their fingers, that's not your burden to carry. You have to understand something important. You can be the most emotionally intelligent, nurturing, confident woman in the world and still not be right for someone who doesn't know how to receive love. That doesn't mean you're the problem. It just means he's not the one. We're so used to looking inward when relationships fail, which is powerful when it leads to growth, but dangerous when it turns into self-blame. Because there's a fine line between reflection and self-sabotage. And too many incredible women end up dimming their own light trying to fit into a mold that was never meant for them in the first place. They stop expressing themselves fully, thinking that maybe if they tone it down, the next guy won't leave. But you weren't born to be toned down. You were born to be seen. When a man isn't ready emotionally, mentally, or spiritually, it doesn't matter how kind, intelligent, or beautiful you are, he will still let you go. Not because you lacked anything, but because he lacks the tools to appreciate what you offer. And one day he'll look back. He'll remember the way you loved him, the way you made him feel, the way you always tried to understand him, even when he was hard to reach. And he'll realize, I lost someone I will never find again. But that realization won't come when you want it to. It won't come when you're crying on the bathroom floor, checking your phone, hoping for a message. It comes later, when you've already picked yourself up, when you've moved on, when you've started glowing in ways you didn't know you could. Because heartbreak has a funny way of becoming the beginning of your next chapter, not the end of your story. And let me say this, walking away doesn't mean you failed. It means you finally realized that loving someone doesn't mean sacrificing yourself. It means you had the strength to say, I want more. I deserve more. And that's not weakness. That's courage. The real win isn't getting him back. It's reclaiming your self-worth. It's remembering who you were before you bent yourself into shapes to be easier to love. It's learning to trust your gut when it tells you that something feels off, even when your heart is still attached. That is strength. That is power. And that is the kind of self-love that sets you free. So no, you didn't lose him. He lost you. He lost the woman who was willing to love him fully, who was willing to build with him, who showed up with intention and depth. And he won't find that again easily, because women like you don't come around every day. He lost the woman he'll never find again. Emotional availability is not some luxury that you hope a partner might have. It's a baseline requirement for a real relationship. And yet so many people lower the bar, tell themselves maybe he just needs time, or he's been through a lot. And suddenly they're carrying the emotional weight of two people. What we often mistake for love is really hope. Hope that someone will eventually rise to meet us where we're already standing. But let me tell you something, a person who's not emotionally available doesn't lose you because he didn't love you. He loses you because he didn't know how to love you in the way you needed and deserved. See, you brought something real to the table, vulnerability. And that takes courage. That means you were willing to show your heart, to open up, to create space for something meaningful. But when you give that to someone who isn't ready, they don't treat it like the gift it is. They don't nurture it. They don't protect it. They question it. They distance themselves from it. Not because you did anything wrong, but because they can't handle the mirror your love holds up to them. You see, real love reflects truth back at someone. And that truth can be confronting. It says, this is what it looks like when someone shows up. This is what it feels like when someone is emotionally present. And when someone isn't ready to face their own fears, their own past, their own inability to be vulnerable, they retreat. They may even tell themselves that you're the problem, that you're too intense, too emotional, too much. But the truth is, you're just clear. Clear on what you want, clear on what you're willing to give. And when someone isn't emotionally available, that clarity threatens the comfort of their avoidance. There's a kind of person who will take everything you offer, your time, your energy, your compassion, and they'll enjoy the attention, enjoy the connection, but they won't invest back. And at some point you realize you're doing all the emotional heavy lifting. You're the one checking in. You're the one initiating conversations about where things are going. You're the one creating emotional safety for both of you while he just coasts. Maybe he says all the right things when you confront him. Maybe he promises change. Maybe he says, I've never felt this way before, and you want to believe it. But watch the actions, because emotional availability doesn't live in words. It lives in consistent effort. People who are emotionally unavailable often don't intend to hurt you, but they still do. And the damage comes in the form of confusion. You start questioning your worth. You start wondering if you were too much. And that self-doubt is what lingers long after they're gone. But the truth is, you were never too much. You were just too real for someone who was afraid of being seen. It's easy to look back and think, maybe if I had been more patient, maybe if I had given him more time. But how long should you wait for someone to meet you with the same emotional depth you bring? A year? 2? Your energy, your openness, your presence. They're not limitless, and giving them to someone who can't hold them with care is like pouring water into a cup with a hole in the bottom. It doesn't matter how much you give, it's never enough to fill them. And this is where you reclaim your power. By understanding that you didn't lose him, he lost the woman he'll never find again, because you are not common. You don't hide behind games. You don't withhold affection as a strategy. You show up, you communicate, you lean in, even when it's scary. And when someone walks away from that or fumbles it because they can't handle the intimacy, that's not your burden to carry. He didn't walk away because you weren't lovable. He walked away because he couldn't receive love in the way you gave it. He couldn't match the emotional quality you brought into the space. And maybe he's been hurt. Maybe he's guarded. Maybe he doesn't know how to be vulnerable. But again, that's not yours to fix. You are not someone's rehab center. You are not someone's emotional proving ground. You're not there to coax, to beg, or to teach someone how to love you. You gave him access to a woman who listens deeply, feels fully, and connects with purpose. And if he couldn't recognize that while he had it, that's not a reflection of you, it's a reflection of where he is in his journey. There are people who go their whole lives chasing surface level interactions because they're terrified of depth. So when depth shows up in the form of a real, emotionally present woman, they run, they shrink, they self-sabotage. And in doing so, they walk away from the exact thing they say they're looking for. That's why emotional availability isn't a bonus, it's the foundation. Without it, everything else crumbles. You can't build connection with someone who only opens up in moments of crisis. You can't grow with someone who retreats every time things get real. You can't love someone into being ready. They have to want to meet you there. And if they don't, that's not a tragedy. It's a redirection. You gave your best. You loved wholeheartedly. You were brave with your emotions. And if he wasn't ready for that, then he didn't lose just any woman. He lost the woman who could have brought real depth, real love, real evolution into his life. And when he finally realizes what that was, when he's sitting across from someone who can't hold a deep conversation or who only shows up halfway, he'll remember the woman who did. The woman who was all in. The woman who was emotionally present, clear, grounded, real. And by that time, you'll be long gone. Not because you weren't loyal, but because you finally understood your love deserves someone who doesn't flinch when it shows up fully. He didn't lose you. He lost the woman he'll never find again. You didn't lose him. He lost you. And not just you as a person. He lost the energy, the love, the loyalty, and the emotional presence you brought into his life. He lost the way you saw him when you were all in. And I need you to understand something important here. He didn't lose you because of who you were. He lost you because of what he wasn't. You showed up. You were there when it mattered. You gave your energy, your vulnerability, your patience. You gave second chances, maybe third. You tried to communicate, to connect, to understand him. You kept asking yourself, what more can I do? You stayed when it was hard. You believed in his potential. You believed in the story you were trying to build together. Whew, that's powerful. That's rare. But love isn't enough if only one person is holding the weight of it. And at some point you had to step back and ask yourself, if I keep doing all the work, what's left of me? Because it's exhausting trying to hold space for someone who isn't showing up for you emotionally. It's painful loving someone who's so consumed with their own fears, pride, or indifference that they can't recognize the gift standing right in front of them. He didn't lose you because you weren't beautiful enough, funny enough, exciting enough, or whatever excuse your mind tries to feed you at 2 a.m. He didn't lose you because you were too much. He lost you because he gave too little. He lost you because he didn't listen when you expressed what you needed. He lost you because he couldn't be consistent with his words, his actions, or his energy. He lost you because he couldn't meet you with the same level of emotional courage and maturity that you were bringing. And maybe it didn't happen all at once. Maybe it was slow. Maybe it was months of micro disappointments, a missed call here, a changed plan there. a subtle withdrawal when things got real. You felt it. The emotional gaps that started opening. You started shrinking parts of yourself just to keep the peace. You started rationalizing things that used to be non-negotiables. You started convincing yourself to stay in something that didn't feel safe or fulfilling anymore because you remembered the potential. But potential doesn't build relationships. Effort does. Consistency does. Vulnerability does. Here's the thing. When you are an emotionally available, lightly and grounded person, you don't fall in love lightly. You give your time and your heart with intention. So when someone mishandles that, it's not just disappointing, it cuts deep. Because it's not just a breakup, it's a rupture of what you thought you were building together. But that pain, that confusion, that spiral of self-doubt, where you question whether you were too needy, too intense, or not enough, that doesn't belong to you. That's the residue of someone else's emotional unavailability. You did your part. You were brave enough to show your heart. You were strong enough to hope. You were real. You were present. And he was inconsistent, or distant, or unavailable, or passive. Or maybe he was charming at the start, but disappeared the moment things got too intimate or too serious. And you kept waiting for him to wake up, to realize what he had. But let me tell you something. When someone wants to be in your life, they don't need to be reminded to show up. They just do. They move towards you, not away from you. It's easy to blame yourself when someone slowly drifts away. You know, one of the hardest pills to swallow is this. Sometimes we find ourselves trying to convince someone to love us, to see us, to realize our worth. We give, we show up, we invest, we stay when it's hard, and we think maybe if I just love them harder, maybe then they'll get it. But here's the truth that most people miss. The right person doesn't need a PowerPoint presentation on why you're valuable. They don't need you to prove yourself or to chase or to overextend just to be seen. They already see you. They already know. When someone is right for you, truly aligned with your value, they won't treat you like an option. They won't take you for granted or keep you guessing. There's no emotional roller coaster. They won't go hot and cold depending on their mood or their ego or how many other distractions they have going on. You won't have to wait 3 hours to get a text back. You won't find yourself rationalizing their behavior, shrinking your needs, or feeling like you're too much just for wanting clarity and consistency. Because when a person really recognizes your worth, they act accordingly. They don't risk losing you over pride. They don't need space to figure out how they feel after months of you showing up for them. They're not out here breadcrumbing, giving you just enough to keep you hoping, but never enough to make you feel secure. No, someone who truly sees your value shows it. Not in just words, not in empty promises, but in consistent, grounded action. Every single day. Let me say this again because I want you to hear it in your bones. Love should not feel like convincing. It should not feel like you're auditioning for a role in someone's life. You don't need to compete. You don't need to prove that you're worthy of love. You are worthy right now as you are. You bring something incredibly rare to the table. Your honesty, your heart, your loyalty, your capacity to care deeply, to stand by someone, to nurture, to support. And not everyone can meet that. Not everyone is capable of holding that. But that's not a reflection of your value. That's a reflection of their readiness. There are people out there who are so used to chaos, to inconsistent love, to transactional relationships, that when they encounter something real, something emotionally healthy, they panic. They pull away. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because they're not prepared for it. They don't have the tools to hold something deep and steady. And if you're not careful, you'll start internalizing their emotional unavailability as your inadequacy. You'll start thinking, maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe I should have tried harder. Maybe I scared him off. No, you didn't scare him off. You simply reflected what he wasn't ready to rise to. That kind of love, the real kind, it challenges people. It asks for accountability. It demands presence. It brings all of their unhealed parts to the surface, and not everyone is willing to face that. Some people would rather lose you than deal with themselves. And that is the painful part, realizing that someone was okay letting you go, not because they didn't feel something, but because the cost of growth was too high for them. They chose comfort over connection, safety over intimacy, ego over evolution. But here's the shift. Just because they walked away doesn't mean you lost. In fact, you dodged a dynamic that was always going to keep you small. And you would have spent your energy trying to manage the relationship, soothe their wounds, fill in the blanks of their inconsistency, and that is not love. That's emotional labor. You are not here to be someone's emotional support system while they figure out how to show up. You are here to build something with someone who is already standing on solid ground, someone who meets you with clarity, with effort, and with joy. So when someone lets you go, especially after you've been nothing but real with them, it is not a testament to your lack. It is a reflection of what they couldn't hold. He didn't leave because you weren't enough. He left because he couldn't recognize what he had in front of him. Or worse, he did recognize it, and he realized he wasn't ready for it. And that's not your burden to carry. I know it's tempting to make excuses for someone who couldn't choose you properly. He's just scared, or he's been hurt before, or he has a lot on his plate right now. And hey, maybe all of that is true, but your love is not a rehab center. You don't need to be someone's therapist or fixer or emotional crutch while they decide whether or not you're worth it. If someone wants you, they'll show up for you. Period. That's not harsh, that's just truth. Love is choice, over and over again, not confusion and delay, wrapped in excuses. And when a man is ready, when he's secure in himself, when he's done hiding behind distractions, he'll look at you and think, I'd be a fool to let her go. He'll prioritize you, not out of fear of losing you, but because he's grounded in the joy of keeping you. That's what alignment feels like. That's what real love looks like. So please, stop mourning the loss of someone who didn't show up for you. Don't grieve the absence of a man who was never truly present in the first place. Don't sit there wondering what you could have done differently to be chosen. You don't need to be chosen by someone who couldn't even recognize gold when it was handed to him. You were never the one who needed to do more. He was the one who needed to rise up and meet the woman in front of him, and he didn't. That's not your failure, that's his loss. You didn't lose him. He lost the woman he'll never find again. One of the hardest pills to swallow is the idea that someone who meant the world to you might never fully understand what they lost. But here's the thing I want you to hold on to. People don't always realize the value of something while they have it. Sometimes they only realize what they had once it's long gone, once it's completely out of reach. And in your case, that's exactly what's going to happen. He didn't just lose a girlfriend. He didn't just lose someone to text or someone to fill the silence. He lost a woman who brought depth, warmth, effort, and real emotional intimacy into his life, something he may never feel again. You see, the truth is, people only feel loss when they realize what they had is irreplaceable. When they look around and realize that no matter how many dates they go on, how many new flings they entertain, or how many surface level connections they chase, it doesn't compare to the way you made them feel. It doesn't compare to your loyalty, your softness, your ability to see through the noise and actually understand them. That kind of connection doesn't come around twice. He'll go looking for you in other people. Maybe not consciously, maybe not right away, but there will come a moment, maybe it's in the silence of his apartment, Maybe it's during a conversation with someone who doesn't quite get him the way you did, when it hits that what he had with you wasn't average, that your kindness wasn't a given, that your effort wasn't owed, that the way you showed up wasn't just standard behavior. It was a reflection of someone who truly cared, deeply, sincerely, and unconditionally. And what will make him realize that loss even more is when he notices he doesn't inspire that same level of depth in others. Because it wasn't just about what you gave, it was about who you were. You didn't love him because he earned it or because he checked all your boxes. You loved him because that's who you are, because you're capable of loving with your whole heart. And once that's gone, once it's not there to fall back on or casually lean on, that absence becomes deafening. You were his safe place. You were the one who tried to understand him, even when he couldn't fully articulate what he was going through. The one who stayed when things were messy. The one who didn't run when it got complicated. And if he thought that kind of love was something he could easily replace, that's on him. That's not your burden to carry. Because the truth is, you brought something to the table that can't be faked, bought, or stumbled upon in a dating app bio. And I get it. There's a part of you that wishes he could just see it now, that he would wake up and recognize what he had before he let it slip away. But sometimes people have to lose you to realize the weight of your presence. They have to sit with the silence that follows. They have to experience the version of life where your laughter, your check-in texts, your warmth, and your patience are no longer there. They have to try and rebuild their peace without the person who made it feel like home. That's when the truth lands with full force. They didn't just lose a relationship, they lost a once-in-a-lifetime connection. And while he's out there wondering what went wrong, trying to recreate a feeling he once had with you, you'll be healing, growing, expanding into a version of yourself that no longer waits for people to see your worth. You'll stop hoping for closure, for acknowledgement, for the apology that may never come, because you'll start to realize that your power was never in being chosen by someone else. It was in being true to yourself, even when someone failed to meet you there. You weren't hard to love, you were just deep in a world that often celebrates shallow. You were loyal in a world obsessed with options. You were consistent in a time where inconsistency is romanticized. And that made you rare. Not everyone is ready for rare. Not everyone knows what to do with someone who shows up for them emotionally fully without playing games. He didn't know how to receive that kind of love. And instead of growing into it, he walked away from it. That's not a reflection of your value. That's a reflection of his unreadiness. And the irony? One day, when he's ready, when he's finally grown into the man who could have handled you, it'll be too late. You won't be in the same place. You'll be further ahead, stronger, wiser. You'll have stopped chasing potential and started recognizing real partnership. Because your future doesn't wait for someone to catch up. It moves forward, with or without them. So don't sit there thinking you lost. Don't wonder if you should have fought harder, stayed longer, dimmed your light just a little bit to make it easier for him to handle. Don't wish for the past to rewrite itself. He didn't walk away from a woman he could replace. He walked away from a woman he'll remember. Not because you begged to stay, but because you had the courage to leave when you realized your love wasn't being met. And that is the loss that echoes. That is the kind of loss that keeps someone up at night. Not the one that slipped through their fingers accidentally, but the one they pushed away before they even realized what they were doing. He lost the woman he'll never find again. You're not waiting to be chosen. You're choosing who's worthy of you. That shift in perspective changes everything. Because for too long, you may have been stuck in that space, that emotional waiting room, wondering if he'll call, if he'll come back, if he'll finally wake up and realize what he had in front of him. But let me tell you something important. Someone who's truly right for you doesn't need to lose you in order to recognize your worth. And if someone has to see you walk away to feel your value, then they never really saw you in the first place. We get caught in this illusion that if we'd just been a little more patient, a little less emotional, a little more cool or chill, maybe he'd have stayed. But that mindset is poison. It places all the power in someone else's hands, as if your worth is only activated once he decides you matter enough. And that couldn't be further from the truth. You're not a reward someone unlocks after stringing you along just enough. You are not a mystery to be solved or a puzzle to be figured out. You are a whole person. And real love, lasting, grounded love, doesn't come from finally convincing someone to take you seriously. It comes from choosing someone who already does. There's a difference between being wanted and being valued. Some people want you because you give them attention. Some want you because you're attractive, exciting, or emotionally generous. But those people don't always value you. Valuing someone means protecting what they bring into your life, being intentional with their heart, showing up with consistency, and honoring the space they create with you. If someone isn't doing that, it's not because you're lacking. It's because they're not capable of holding something real right now. And that's their journey to fix, not yours to wait on. You don't have time to sit in emotional limbo while someone figures out if they're ready. Your life is moving, your standards are rising, and your peace is too valuable to be disrupted by someone who's still undecided about what they want, or worse, someone who does know what they want and still won't treat you right. It's easy to romanticize someone after they've left. Your mind starts editing the story, remembering the highs, the moments of connection, the potential. You start thinking, maybe I was too much. Maybe I scared him away. Maybe if I'd been different. No, that narrative will keep you stuck. Don't forget, if someone had the chance to love you and didn't, that's not a reflection of your lovability. It's a reflection of their limitations. You are not standing still hoping someone turns around, but you're walking forward. And as you do, you're becoming more and more aligned with the person who doesn't hesitate, doesn't leave, and doesn't need to lose you to get it. That person exists, and they'll never put you in a position where you feel you have to prove your value over and over again.